You want your wife to feel heard, but you're not going to lie and agree with things you don't actually agree with. That feels fake, and you're worried it will create more problems. Here's the truth. Making her feel heard and agreeing with her are two completely different things. And once you understand the difference, everything changes. Most men think there are only two options. Either you agree with what she's saying, or you tell her she's wrong. But there's a third option that most men never learn. You validate her feelings and perspective without requiring yourself to adopt her view as your own. Here's what validation actually is. Validation means acknowledging that her experience is real and makes sense from her perspective. It doesn't mean you think she's right about the facts. It doesn't mean you would feel the same way in her position. It just means you recognize she's genuinely experiencing what she's experiencing. Think of it this way. If your wife says, "I'm cold," and you're not cold, you don't say, "No, you're not, I'm fine." You say, "Let me get you a blanket." You're not agreeing that the temperature is objectively cold. You're acknowledging that she is experiencing coldness. That's validation. The same principle applies to emotions and perspectives. She can feel dismissed even if you didn't intend to dismiss her. She can feel hurt even if you didn't mean to hurt her. Validating those feelings doesn't require you to agree that your actions were wrong. It just requires you to acknowledge the impact. So how do you actually do this in conversation? First, separate her feelings from her interpretation. You can always validate feelings even when you disagree with her interpretation of events. Try this. "I can see you're really frustrated about what happened." That validates the emotion. You're not saying, "You're right to be frustrated," or "I agree with your version of events." You're just acknowledging the feeling is real. Second, use the phrase, "from your perspective." This is a game changer. From your perspective, that must have felt really dismissive. See what that does? You're acknowledging how it felt to her without saying that's objectively what happened. You're validating her experience while leaving room for your own perspective. Third, acknowledge her viewpoint without abandoning your own. Try. "I understand why you see it that way. I see it a bit differently, but I hear where you're coming from." This does two critical things. It shows you've actually listened to her perspective, and it makes space for disagreement without invalidation. Here's what this looks like in practice. She's upset you forgot to do something she asked. She says, "You never listened to me." Old response, "That's not true. I listen to you all the time." That's defensive. You're making her defend her statement instead of addressing her feeling. New response, "I can see why you'd feel that way when I forgot something you specifically asked about. That must be frustrating." Notice what you didn't do. You didn't agree that you never listen. You didn't admit fault. You validated the frustration of being forgotten. Now she feels heard, and you can have a real conversation about what happened. Here's another example. She's upset about how you handled something with the kids. She thinks you were too harsh. You think you were fine. Old response, "I wasn't too harsh. You're too soft on them." New response, "I hear that it felt too harsh to you. I was trying to set a clear boundary, but I understand we might see this differently." You just validated her feeling without agreeing she's right. You explained your intention without dismissing her concern. That's how you make her feel heard while maintaining your perspective. Now here's the key. After you've validated her perspective, you can share yours, but not before. Most men try to make themselves understood before making their wife feel understood. That's backwards. Validation first, then your perspective. Try this sequence. "I can see why that bothered you. From your angle, I get it." Pause. Let that land. Then, "Can I share how I saw the situation?" Now she's actually able to hear you because she feels heard first. One more critical piece. You can validate without solving. She tells you about a frustration. You validate. "That sounds really overwhelming." She feels heard. You don't need to fix it or agree with every detail. The validation itself creates connection. Here's where men get stuck. You think if you validate her feelings when you don't agree with her facts, you're being dishonest. But you're not. Feelings aren't right or wrong, they just are. You can genuinely acknowledge her emotional experience while still having a different view of the situation. Let's walk through a full scenario. She's upset you made plans without checking with her first. She feels like her schedule doesn't matter to you. You think the plans were fine and she's overreacting. Here's how to handle it. I can see this really bothered you. When I made those plans without checking, you felt like your time and schedule weren't being considered. Is that right? She confirms. I understand why that would feel that way. I can see how my not checking would send that message even though that wasn't my intent. Now you've validated. She feels heard. Now you can explain. My thinking was that it wouldn't affect your schedule since it's on your free night, but I see now that I should have checked first rather than assumed. Can we figure out a better system going forward? See how that works? You didn't agree she was right to be upset. You didn't admit you did something terrible. You acknowledged her emotional experience and the impact of your action. Then you explained your thinking and moved towards solution. That's how you honor both her feelings and your perspective. One final insight. Making your wife feel heard isn't about walking on eggshells or pretending you agree when you don't. It's about genuinely trying to understand her experience before asking her to understand yours. When you nail this, disagreements become discussions instead of fights. You can have different views without anyone feeling dismissed. So next time you disagree with your wife, remember, validate the feeling, acknowledge her perspective, then share your own. You don't have to choose between being honest and making her feel heard. You can do both. Comment below and let me know what you are currently struggling with in your communications with your wife. Click the link in the first comment or check my bio to discover an ebook that can help improve your communication with your wife.